I want an assistant like you too, Joelle.
But you're really good. Technically, you don't need any assistance. I was trying for the sound. Is it okay? Have you heard the sound of the video?
We heard
Sound
it
is
perfectly.
perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, great.
All right, I'm gonna start to admit people if that's okay for you, Koen.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, this is Cristina Martinez.
Hello, Cristina.
Hi, everyone. I see
Hello.
known faces. Hi.
Good afternoon.
I'm clicking all these buttons. Yes, I agree to the recording. Hello. Hi. How is it going, Martina?
Very well, very well. So we are happening a full house also because we are streaming it. So
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, makes me think that I should send a tweet now. I will do this immediately. Okay. So I'm with you. You'll just let me know when you need me, okay? I'm going to mute myself.
I think that, Joelle, I think we can start.
So hello, everyone. My name is Joelle Mastelik. I'm the manager of the Energy Living Lab and proud member of the ENOL Council, responsible for the Task Force on Energy and Environment. And it's really a pleasure to have you here today to this conference. This is for me a hybrid conference with the Digital Living Lab Days in ENOL and the National Thematic Network on the Decarbonization of Energy in Switzerland. So I would like to thank you for being there, and I would like to remember you the objectives of this topic debate. So this topic debate in the environment field, the idea is to understand what would be the role of the Living Lab and the Living Lab methods toward a greener and in future integrated with the digital solution. So we will hear today experts in the domain of either greening the economy or digitalization, or the way how to combine both. So we really have a nice panel of experts in the field of decarbonization. So I think it's really great. This topic debate is organized on the flagship 7 on the greening and digitalization of the environment. So we are really pleased to be here today. And I would like to present a short video of what we do in order to understand how the Living Lab could contribute with concrete example, because sometimes it's complicated to know what are the Living Labs, what are they doing exactly. So I will share my screen and show you a little video about what we do in the national network. And then I will give the word to the other speakers and the panelists.
Network, Living Labs for Decarbonisation, is an innovation booster which aims to drive social innovation in the energy sector.
L'association Energy Living Lab, elle fédère un groupe de Living Lab travaillant sur le domaine de l'énergie qui se développe dans toutes les régions de Suisse.
Pour moi, un Living Lab, c'est une organisation qui permet de résoudre des problématiques compliquées, complexes. Et la manière dont elle les résout, c'est en impliquant différents types d'acteurs pour co-designer une solution et la tester et la développer en situation réelle.
We have 4 thematics in decarbonisation, and they include mobility, circular economy, energy efficiency, and digitalisation.
On propose des financements pour justement soutenir le développement de produits et services innovants dans la décarbonisation. On a aussi un rôle de mise en réseau pour pouvoir les connecter et puis construire sur les compétences des différents partenaires.
Alors le NTN, il donne un élan, une impulsion, et puis il permet en fait de faire émerger des projets en lien avec une mobilité plus intelligente, plus performante, plus verte.
Wir sind der Meinung, dass wir mit diesem InnoSwiss-Instrument NTN Innovation Booster Unterstützung erhalten, um eben radikale Innovationen entwickeln zu können.
Die Stadt Winterthur, die kann natürlich mit dem NTN-Programm wirklich durch dieses Crowdsourcing viele Ideen zur Dekarbonisierung der Stadt entwickeln und diese dann auch sehr rasch testen.
Il fatto di avere differenti competenze all'interno dell'hackathon serve avere una grande ricchezza all'interno del processo di generazione delle idee.
Et peut-être justement un des acteurs du Mobility Lab, la Poste Suisse, elle a un besoin par rapport à ça. Elle vise une neutralité climatique à l'échelle 2040 et effectivement des solutions créatives et innovantes sont nécessaires pour y parvenir.
So how does our innovation booster work? If you have an idea for decarbonisation, you can bring it to us through our ideation platform, innobooster.org.
So this is a short summary of what we can do, or one initiative in one country, but in Enol we have a lot of different initiatives that we would like to share today with you. So I will let the word to Mrs. Sorry. Yeah, it is the direct, it's always like this. You're sure that everything is happening correctly and then something happens. So I now would like to welcome and give the word to Veronica Manfredi. So Veronica works in the DG environment and she's responsible, she's the director for the quality of life. She's working on air quality, water and industrial emissions. And she would like to share with us the zero pollution vision and to know how to integrate the Living Labs in order to help this vision to come true. So Veronica, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Joelle. It's such an incredible pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon because your beautiful introductory video already said it all. It's about driving the different future that we all want. But maybe may I say from the start, you stressed very much the word decarbonization. And today we are here to stress the fact that we can achieve even faster and better results for our citizens if we create an inextricable connubium between decarbonizing and depolluting at the same time. Because when we look at clean energy, we look at reducing CO2 emissions, but we know that by actually embracing clean energy, we get so many co-benefits in terms of cleaner air, cleaner waters, and so on. So allow me to quickly share with you a little PowerPoint presentation that tries to drive you through the Zero Pollution Action Plan that the European Commission has adopted in May this year. Let's hope that there are no hiccups for the presentation. Let's see. Voila, you should get it in a second. Can you see it?
Yes, perfectly.
Wonderful, I'm happy it works. So indeed, the point of departure of our work has been that we all see how much the planet is actually facing 4 intertwined major ecological crises. We tend to regroup them under the name of climate change. But actually, we should never forget that climate change is, I would say, at the same time, the cause and the effect, because what we see is that we've also been driving over the last 40 years a dramatic amount of biodiversity loss. We have lost 60% of known species in just 40 years. And this is, of course, not without consequences for the way we live and we produce. We are making, since over the last 40 years as well, an increasingly unsustainable use of our resources. And this is all coming with the price of pollution. Why do we have a need to be acting with a certain urgency on pollution? Well, because we know that even in the very civilized and overall well-educated old continent in which many of you have the pleasure to be, we still pay a tribute every year of over 255,000 premature deaths just for cancers linked to environmental pollution. Main driver often being lack of clean air still in a number of our member states and in a number of regions. And unfortunately, pollution is a driver for many other diseases that you see in this slide. The second most common one, unfortunately, being ischemic heart disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, just to mention a few. So lot of health issues that we continue to face just because typically the air, but sometimes also the water we drink and the soil from which we grow our products is not in good health. Now, this is precisely the reason why, when the college adopted the European Green Deal back in December 2019, without knowing that COVID-19 would have struck and blocked our economies the way it did just a couple of months afterwards, we had put in this overarching narrative the need indeed to drive Europe, you see it at the very beginning of the slide, on the one hand towards climate neutrality by 2050, but also by moving towards a zero pollution ambition for a toxic-free environment. And this is why already at the end of 2020, we actually produced a chemicals strategy for sustainability, because as you can imagine, chemicals are a particularly visible pollutant, type of pollutant that can indeed pollute air, waters, and soil. It came, as Vice President Timmermans likes to say, as an early bird of our zero pollution efforts. And then in May, we came up with our zero pollution action plan and vision. The vision that the college has put forward is a vision whereby by 2050, in full alignment with the decarbonization efforts, air, water, and soil pollution must be reduced to levels which are no longer considered harmful to health and to natural ecosystems, because I've not been underlining this enough until now, but we know that pollution is one of the 5 major drivers of biodiversity loss as well. So essentially, we need to bring our activities back to limits and boundaries of pollution that our planet can cope with. We are living on a smart planet that has been for millennia used to cope with pollution created also by certain anthropogenic activities, but we have to reduce the intensity of the way we pollute to allow the planet to be able to, react. So, of course, this effort on pollution is perfectly in line with our efforts toward achieving sustainable development goals and really contributes to let's say, restoring that biosphere part of our environment without which nothing else can exist. We like to focus a lot on our society, on our economy, because we are human beings and we tend to look at the way we live, the way we are. But we should never forget that without the biosphere being in good health, all the rest progressively falls apart. And I think that unfortunately some of the issues we have experienced throughout the COVID-19 saga have dramatically reminded us of that. In the Zero Pollution Action Plan, one of our key messages has been we truly must implement what the principle, what the treaty has already enshrined since years, which is the notion of we should, first of all, across all levels of industrial production, energy production, way we produce and consume subsequently, aim to prevent pollution. Minimizing and controlling pollution should only come as a second step, and elimination and remediation of damages as the third step. Too often, let's face it, in nowadays world, we still see a certain accent on, okay, let's pollute, but okay, let's try to minimize the impact, etc., etc. No, the effort also by design should be an effort to try and invent products and systems that do not pollute from the outset. Can we get there? I hope so. And I believe that we have the right moment for getting there. You will see, if you have the opportunity to read the Zero Pollution Action Plan, that it is structured around 3 thematic priorities and 4 key enablers. The thematic priorities, of course, look at how to improve the health and the well-being of mankind on this planet. It looks at how to secure that we can all live within planetary boundaries, thus restoring the equilibrium of our natural ecosystems. And then it zooms into really zero pollution production and consumption. And it looks at the 4 key enablers that we believe are there to enable us to reach the results we want. We need to boost change across society. And I think that the digital living labs are the perfect driver to get there. We need to better track progress made. We need to ensure a stricter implementation and enforcement, and we need to promote change worldwide. We have identified 9 flagships in our Zero Pollution Action Plan. They're all spelled out here. You will see the number 1, of course, is reducing the health inequalities through zero pollution. It's not a coincidence. It's simply because all the data, all the scientific evidence shows how much, unfortunately, the victims of pollution tend to be also people that are more vulnerable. And it's a vulnerability that is both linked to age, but also often to a social vulnerability. Pollution, poverty. It's a big, big link. So we should also in our mindset always think that fighting pollution is also a sign of becoming a better grown up, a richer and a more intelligent society, a society of greater fairness. But today we will zoom in particular on the flagship number 7, on our living labs. How indeed can we boost change across society for zero pollution? I really believe that the 2 key ways to get there is to showcase the future, a little bit like our colleague Joelle has just been doing a second ago with her beautiful video. And for example, starting by showcasing zero pollution solutions for our buildings. Here we know that we can build a lot of synergies with the fantastic efforts which are being done within the new European Bauhaus. And of course, through these living labs, we just heard it, these may I call them the new Renaissance cradle, where we unite beautiful minds, artistic spirits, engineering spirits, scientists, researchers, people that all want to solve certain problem, and uniting the best of the brains could come up with breakthrough solution. This is what we need. And what you see in the slide is also the various, I would say, tools and means, including financial ones, of course, through which we can develop skills and get there where we want. Now, quintessential for us is, of course, to work together with cities and regions. You can only showcase difference if things happen in real life. Now, the key action areas that we have identified in the ad hoc staff working paper on digital solution for zero pollution, which has been adopted jointly with the action plan, are all displayed in this slide. I will not read them one by one, but you see that the variety is enormous. We have opportunities to go towards digital water better protection. Today, through digital means, we can much easier and better control the quality of our waters, control problems in terms of quantity, digital solutions for transformation of our industry, which is very dear to our hearts because we are in the midst of an important revision of the Industrial Emission Directive, just to mention a few. Key recommendations have been also issued in this important staff working document, and you will see that the red thread throughout this recommendation is that eventually we have to break silos, create networks, bring together the environment and the digital experts, deploy solutions where digital is, if I may say, at the service of finding solutions to this problem that are problems threatening the overall sustainability and I would say existence even of our generation for preserving and building a completely different future. I hope a much better one and more stable for the generations to come. So here comes the focus on our flagship 7 that today you will explore. I really believe that engaging and empowering citizens, bringing up these new ideas, deploying these new solutions, even as a prototype, but on the ground, therefore showing that a different future is truly possible is at the key. In just a few months, we will be launching a bespoke zero pollution stakeholder platform, very much following the model of the circular economy stakeholder platform, somehow also the European Climate Pact, because we want to engage with all those, I hope like you, that are listening to us today, that want indeed to pay a tribute and help in building this different future in parallel with the decarbonization efforts. As I said at the very beginning, it's often about showing the co-benefits of getting cleaner, more circular, more sustainable. So I really hope this today's workshop will shed light on many of the questions some of you may have. Should you have more, don't hesitate to contact us. You see our functional mailbox, and I'm myself always extremely pleased to get engaged with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this inspiring introduction to the world of zero pollution vision. And now I will give the word to Martina Tesole. Martina is our new director at the European Network of Living Lab, and she will introduce the panelists and moderate the panel today with our experts. Martina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joelle, and thank you very much to Veronica Manfredi for presenting the policy basis for our debate today. Very important engagement from the European Commission, very important policies, and it is our pleasure to now involve directly the stakeholders. So we will have now a panel where we are going to discuss directly with Living Labs experts who are actually trying to deploy solutions to see which are some of the best practices, some of the potential problems, and how Living Labs have so far helped in maximizing the impact and getting closer to the citizens and bringing solutions. So I would like to welcome to the panel very qualified speakers, starting from Georgia Ifantopoulou, the Deputy Director and Research Director at the Hellenic Institute of Transport, and she is also the Head of Research of Intelligent Infrastructure and Networks, Sustainable Mobility and Logistics, so with an eye on the mobility. Of course, Joelle, who has already introduced herself, and beside being in our ENOL Council and of course responsible for the Energy Living Labs, she's also a professor at the University of Applied Science in Western Switzerland. Peter de Jong from the Water Campus Leeuwarden, who is the EU representative of VETSUS and the Water Campus Leeuwarden, European Center of Excellence for Sustainable Water Technologies, to speak about water, and Joanna Fergadiotto, the R&D Director of INLECOM and in charge of the technical management of the lead European project that is focusing on the creation of digital twin for low emission last mile logistics. So really bringing together the digital part with, of course, the more zero pollution idea. And to close, we have the pleasure to have with us Cristina Martinez, who is the Deputy Head of Unit of the Smart Mobilities and Living Unit in DG Connect, who will be actually conclude the day. So I would like to immediately start asking all the panelists what are the main issues to reach a zero pollution on water and soil. So can you identify being really the privileged and forefront actor in the digital and green transition which are the main issue. It's a very fast panel. You will have 2 minutes each, so please just give us the highlights that will help us start working on recommendation for the future. So I would start with Georgia or Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia, it's fine. I'm very happy participating, and I hope I will contribute to this very interesting and very important discussion of today on how Living Labs can contribute for the zero pollution strategy. So I can speak mainly for air, since smart mobility is related with reduction of pollution in air. But I would like to highlight 5 main issues. The first main issue is to achieve the understanding of the air pollution impact to the zero strategy effect for each city. So usually we create policies justifying on the basis of global data. However, when we need to engage the stakeholders, we need to engage the citizens, we need to speak with them about the specific situation. So they are Living Labs collecting information, analyzing information, providing the real impact and the real justification for the policies is something important. And this is the main issue, how we convince that this general problem, it's also their problem for their own life. The second issue that I believe is important in order to have such a strategy successful is to taking actions following to a holistic approach for decreasing the air pollution in its geography of reference. So it is important to see the whole picture and to tackle the roots of the problem. It is the industrial and the domestic and the transport sector smoke that we need to regulate. It's passenger mobility and fleet transport that we need to tackle equally with zero emission solutions. The electric vehicles should use clean energy, so cleaning the supply chain of energy is also very important. The third issue is that we need to achieve a focus on innovation integration, not on the technology implementation. So it's a different thing to adopt innovation and then implement technology. So technology is enabler, but the innovation is our main issue that we need to achieve for zero emission green solutions. So making green innovative solutions part of the citizen's life, not part of the use of technology, creating simulating environments that prove that this type of solutions can really give the effect that we're expecting is also the issue that we need to secure, we will provide to the stakeholders and the citizens of our cities. The fourth issue is that Living Labs support the new collaborative business model. So we need this type of new business models for having this solution being implemented in the cities. So this is a major issue. We need to see how we will achieve feasible but also economically viable solutions. And I will put what it has been said in as a fifth issue, as it has been mentioned also by the introductory speech, is that the engagement and the empowering of the citizens. So make them to be part of this accomplishment. So these are the issues. And I selected these issues because they are very much related with the Living Labs, but we will come again back to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Georgia. Joel, I think that these issues highlighted by Georgia are very much applicable to all the sectors. And what about your decarbonization?
Yeah, I think that the keywords are really the same. I think that we really need a systemic approach, because if we look at only one part of the problem, we cannot solve in a complex system anything. And also we should avoid the word solving, because we are just trying to adapt and we are trying to innovate or co-design, but solving the problem is often really complicated in a socio-technical system in a complex system. So I would totally agree with the holistic approach. And I think that the by design is really important. We heard this morning about nudges, and I know that it has never good press, but nudging for me, it's about what is the default setting and how the default could be positive. So often the issue is that the design of the default has not been reflected correctly, neither integrated with the stakeholders. And also in terms of energy and climate, often we have a plan, for energy and plan for climate, and they are not connected. So at the moment, we are developing a project trying to co-design the energy and climate plan for cities. Because if these are not connected, we will not be able to communicate and to exchange and going to the roots, as Georgia mentioned, the roots of the problem. And I really would like to stress that connecting social part and technological part is important, and often is the issue because the engineers are working on the technical part and sociologists are working on the social part. And I have heard about the social readiness indicator. That could be a tool, because at the moment we have the technology readiness indicator, but are the people ready for the new technologies, for zero pollution and decarbonization? I'm not sure. So I think that the fifth one would be the connection of the different level. We see today, we try and do it with the international level, and then the national level, the regional level, and the local level. It's really complicated to have objectives that are aligned on the different levels, and try and have something which is coherent and integrated different stakeholders. Because at the local level, that's fine, but then when you integrate the different levels, it's becoming really complicated. So for my side, the issues.
Thank you very much, Joel. Peter, what about the water sector?
Thank you very much, and I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, perfectly.
Thanks also for the introduction from earlier from Joel and Veronica. I think they sketched the scene very well. Within the water sector, we basically have 4 different dimensions that are of importance. On the one hand, it's the drinking water and the wastewater. That would be the dimensions from the water sector itself. But we also have to deal with surface waters and the groundwater. Because also there pollution occurs or has occurred, and we need to take that into account. Some of the elements that needs to be removed are, for instance, pharmaceuticals, pesticides, etc. So these are, let's say, background challenges. But then also we look within the sector itself. So what was mentioned, not to pollute from the outset, that is exactly what's within the Water Campus, where we're working on. Trying to develop breakthrough technologies to stimulate sustainable water technology. And for us, sustainable would mean that we aim for as much as possible technologies that use zero chemicals. So natural processes, so that the process itself doesn't add more chemicals to the environment. And preferably the solutions that we develop are useful for humanity at large. So that even if you apply them scale them up, that billions of people use them, that still the whole picture on energy use, resource use, etc., fits within planetary boundaries, etc. I will come up with some of the solutions later in the session. So this is just to sketch the scene. And then, of course, sometimes we have to deal with the end user, for instance, water use in households. Many times we are acting more on the level of intervention on region or city level. Yeah, thank you. This, I think, is for now. Thank you.
A very good start. Thank you very much, Peter. Joanna, talking about the digital twins and especially the logistics sector, which are your takeaways?
Yes, thank you very much again for the invitation. I'm happy to be with you today here. So exactly on the logistics sector and transport systems, they still remain a major source of emissions, and transport specifically is one of the few sectors that hasn't made progress in lowering emissions since 1990. So despite measures that can be taken like limited zones or the slow adoption of electric cars, we need a consolidated and systemic, as Georgia said, way of looking and designing smart and adaptive systems, including also incorporating in that mix the citizens. So there is still work to do in decarbonization. Regarding the on-demand logistics, we've seen the huge impact of COVID, for example, and how much strain it has been put on last mile logistics. It didn't only increase the volumes and the demand, but also created complexity. and congestion and consequently pollution. So we need to look and have tools like digital twinning tools that we can focus on later in the discussion and explain a bit more on that. And in order to be able to create some kind of provisional simulations before implementing interventions in the city. Two other things I wanted to also highlight. One is the maturity of the infrastructure. It's not only the solutions, like electric cars, we also need the charging stations, so these go hand in hand. And the infrastructure planning is critical and needs to be very well thought and data-driven in order to avoid unnecessary changes or implementation costs. Of course, the consumers that are the heart of the problem and the solution. They need to be actively engaged in initiatives locally and globally. And we need to, therefore, we need to create incentives and measures to increase their awareness and make them turn them from just following results being drivers of change towards a greener city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanna. We can see really a pattern that it is very important to tackle this by design, holistic and systemic approach at all levels, also at the infrastructure level, as Joanna was just saying. And of course, designing properly means also involving the final stakeholders. So that's why also Living Labs are so well placed to contribute to the discussion. So for the second round of questions, I would like to ask you, what do you if you consider the use of Living Lab until now in the implementation of this towards zero pollution policy a success, and if you have some lessons learned or insights you would like to share, and if you think or you can see that there are already some impact of the Living Lab tool. We still have only 2 minutes each, but we can a little bit elaborate on this anyways. So I will start again from Georgia.
Thank you, Martina. Well, when we read the action plan, that is the subject of our discussion, I think it is very ambitious. Is aiming to major results achievement in a very short period of time. And when you need speed in decision, and when you need cross-sectorial implementation, and when you need the consensus of multiple stakeholders, then only the Living Lab operation is the one can answer to this. So for me, Living Lab correctly is the only success story that we can repeat and who can enlarge the scope of in order to face and to achieve the objectives of the action plan. And this is a belief based on results, at least from mobility, from our Thessaloniki Smart Mobility Living Lab, but also from other mobility Living Labs. And what we have seen the Living Labs to help the ecosystems in the cities towards transition to innovation. So we have seen disruptive mobility solutions coming in the cities, and nobody was able to understand the impact. Nobody was able to guide the decision makers for the correct decision. And Living Labs, when it operates, they really achieve better results regarding this innovation adoption by the ecosystems. Therefore, and these solutions already are zero air pollution solutions. So reductions of congestion and of emissions, examples of technology in accessing low emission zones. All these are good examples where the ecosystem approach of Living Labs achieves very good results. The second point that I can say from previous experience is that the Living Labs have an impact in strategy adoption. The Living Labs, usually they have a vision and they have a strategy. So all those that they come in the Living Lab partners, they have learned and they know how to create strategies and how to convince citizens in adopting these strategies. And we have seen that. We have seen mobility Living Labs to be very active in sustainable member mobility plans, sustainable member logistics plan strategies, and implementation and visions creation. So there is a knowledge there. We need to use it and to maximize it. What is there? The other thing that we can see is that Living Labs can provide very good impact quantification of the measures. So usually we have observatories that they follow the mobility system development and the impacts from the adoptions. And then also, as Joanna said, through digital tools, through new modeling approaches, they present what-if analysis. They can substantiate good answers to what-if analysis, and they can help the decision makers. The cities of the future, they face uncertainties, many of them. So we need to have resilience by design. And to do that, we need all these tools and collaborative spaces that are created by Living Labs. And then there are methodologies we can quickly implement now. So through that, I will end with the last point. All the previous, they strengthen the capacity building of the stakeholders. And this is something that we need absolutely. And Living Labs is the best environment to achieve improvement of capacity building for the stakeholders, public and private, but also for the citizens empowering, which is important. Right now, we have citizens participating, not empowered. So Living Labs, like our Living Labs, others, they create applications that gives them the possibility to check if a decision was correct and ask for a change. That's all from my side in this.
Thank you very much. A lot of good food for thought. So, Joelle.
Yeah, this is really a vast question. And I think that in terms of successes, what is really important is the indicators. So we really need more indicators in the lessons learned in order to see if there is a success or not. Here in Switzerland, we have developed, for instance, the project Rupit in order to develop the integration of solar panels on the household level. And we had a success with this because we have co-designed the program with the citizen, with the public authorities, with the universities. So I think that we have had quite successes in different projects, but we cannot stay at the project level. So what we wanted to develop is to develop social franchises in order to develop different labs in different regions and to integrate a higher impact of our different programs. Because if we have developed a great initiative in one region, we should be able to scale up. And at the moment, like 10 years after the beginning of this movement, we really need more uplift on the activities that we do so that we really have an impact regionally, but also nationally and internationally. So I think that this is the role of ENOL also to communicate these best practices. 2 years ago in Thessaloniki, we had the Mission Innovation asking to impact 10,000 cities in the world. We don't know how to do this at the moment. We know how to do this in Geneva. We know how to do this in Italy, in Quebec, in France. And I say hello to all my friends following here from these countries, but we don't know how to replicate this in such a larger scale. So if we really want to have an impact and have success with these Living Lab methods, we need more measurement. For instance, the social readiness indicator I was talking about, and we need as well a systematic way of upscaling and disseminating what we do. And I'm not talking about the work package called the dissemination in the projects. It's really about how to scale up at the massive level so that we can really see an impact on the pollution. And for sure, the default setting is really important, and the lessons learned as well from Sustain, the Nobel Prize in economy. It's really important to design and co-design the default that is the right one for zero pollution. Otherwise, we will still continue 10 years to do behavior change and try and change the people. But we have to change also the context in which the people live so that we can have the best design, for instance, for urbanism, so that we encourage the people to take the bike instead of the car. So thank you, Martina.
Thank you very much, Joël. So scale up, awareness raising, co-design, very important keywords. Peter, what about your experience in the Water Campus?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, we have actually in the Living Lab and demonstration sites of the Water Campus over the past 15 years demonstrated various technologies very successfully. One of the main challenges for global biodiversity is the overdose of nutrients. So we're focused on, in that sense, removing them from wastewater, manure, and surface water. And we were able to test these through various inner projects, but also European projects. We also participated in a challenge in the Everglades in the United States, and we won several rounds the first prize of the global competition in that sector. Yeah, as I mentioned, we're developing zero chemical water treatment so that there's no pollution from the process itself. We've demonstrated at a hospital wastewater treatment site the removal of pharmaceuticals, of course, a very important emerging concern. Also linked to, for instance, the bacteria that no longer are getting resistant towards antibiotics. This sort of emerging stress factors we are now testing at sites where patients are. So at the hospital we have been doing that. We've also been developing, you might not expect it, but it's linked to water technology in our institute, a stationary energy storage system in which we actually only use salt and water. So there's no mining, no rare earths, no conflicts, and no toxins. It's also not possible to explode, but you can put this battery in any district next to solar fields or wind power batteries in order to stabilize the grid and to use the electricity whenever you want. And you can easily use it for seasonal storage. So this is one of our sustainable solutions that we've been developing. Something else that we've developed with the use of citizens, it's the biodegradable bioplastics, which we're able to make from food that was actually already eaten by our citizens. So we're not competing with food, but we're making it from the food that already has been eaten and has been delivered to the location which people a few times per day visit. And that is the resource for the bacteria in order to produce fully biodegradable and sustainable bioplastics. These sort of technology also we more and more test with end users. And for instance, we also use serious gaming in which in the city around the water campus called Leeuwarden, districts have been performing a water battle. So to make sure that their district would be most efficient in cutting the water use. This summer it's been raining a lot, but the last 3 summers were super dry. So it was very helpful that the actual drinking water use was curbed from expanding to be a bit more conscious and having people use water when it's needed and not because it's available. I think these are some of the things that we've already been doing and have shown great success. And we look forward to building forward on this and also connect with other European platforms and of course through Enel to further show how this can work and how it might work in other cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Absolutely, I see also some overlaps with the mission Starfish, for example, and how to really clean waters at this level as well. Joanna, the last word is yours.
Thank you. I won't repeat our colleagues here. I wanted to highlight that the Living Lab as a notion is an innovation driver. It's very important. Now, our lead project was built around 6 living labs, and despite COVID and despite all the difficulties, the whole value chain of actors within their cities were engaged and tried to design solutions. They planned the ideal scenario they had in mind. Now we are in the next step of building the digital twin of that scenario. The most important thing, I think, of involving actors in the living labs is about validating the feasibility, if it makes sense or not. And also it is a means of bridging the gap in competing interests, because not all stakeholders in the value chain in logistics, for example, they don't have the same view. City authorities have a different view, business stakeholders have a different view. So the Living Lab is a place, a forum to bridge these gaps. And then if we want to bring it into a digital world, we can use agent-based models that can actually reflect these relationships. And it's very important to have these views and validate what is feasible and what not. Now, in terms of the difficulties in, let's say, building twins of living labs, because this is a way to scale up as well, there is a difficulty in real-time data, not data, there is an abundance of data, but the twins, in order to function, need real-time data, and we're not there yet. There is a lot of initiatives in digitalization, but we are still lagging behind. And the second thing is about combining models. This is a technical, a very, let's say, deep technical challenge of, if you want to create a digital twin of a broader area, let's say, you need to combine different types of models, and there is some kind of challenge. If we overcome that, I believe that we'll be able to have the digital twin of all the living labs, and this can be a very an avenue to scale up across Europe and beyond.
Thank you very much. Very interesting angle as well. Thank you, Joanna. I just would like to, before going to the last round of statements, to remind you that it's possible to drop a question in the chat. We will have 5 minutes. We can pick a couple of questions. So please, if you have questions for our speaker, please just drop it there. So to close with our third round, I would like to ask you a quick statement about what are your expectations regarding the flagship initiatives, this new network that will be launched, and not only in terms of funding, but also as policy, regulatory support, how to foster the network. So what are your expectations on this? So we start again with Georgia.
Thank you, Martina. First of all, I have to say that I'm very happy seeing that EC recognized the role of living labs and have them as one of the flagship actions for the action plan towards zero pollution for air, water, and soil. I think this is already a good step. We started alone in some cities, in some regions, and we proved that this is the collaboration and an ecosystem approach is the only possibility to solve the complex problems, and that is already an achievement. Now we expect from this integration of living labs and the flagship initiative to achieve more. And what are these more that we are looking for? First of all, we would like to have living labs and being enabled to move in our cities from pilots to real big scale implementations. So the living labs need empowerment. So it's not only the funding, as you said, but needs probably some support in institutionalization, needs to be an actor being asked to provide opinion and to give guidance in the stakeholders in different planning process. That is a way that we can make living labs mean more participatory in this type of decisions. The developments of the new tools we are expecting through this action plan to have the possibility to develop new tools for impact assessment, as Joanna said, with digital twins, new models, new decision-making tools for that. we also expect that what we try to do in a project is named Sprout, and I invite you to look at this whenever you have the possibility. We're expecting that we will be able to develop innovative policy response. It's just to test or introduce the innovation, but you need policy response to strengthen, to augment the innovation, and then achieve, let's say, fertilization in other cases. So innovative policy response is something that we are looking forward to be a major component of the Living Labs activity. And finally, I think we need to go cross-sector. So we have the thematic vertical specializations, this Super Labs initiative by EC, this new concept is the way to go, and and we need to follow up and create the content, define what is Super Labs and how we can make different living labs, create the super labs that are needed for more holistic and systematic approach for zero emission. And finally, and we need the networking, and we need to strengthening structures like ENOL in order to have the role of exchanging of information, of coordinating, and why not? Probably in the future we can, let's say, rank living labs or giving them a stamp saying that this is a zero emission living lab, or this is a zero strategy living lab. So let's announce and define what the Living Labs role is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. Joelle.
So from my side, the expectations are really similar. I think that we need mechanism for upscaling and not looking at one by one projects, but being able to give a framework for generating synergies between the projects, synergies between the regions, in order to have an impact and be able to share the best practices and not reinvent the wheel, because it has been a lot of experiments in the field, and we really need to build from the different experiences that have been done already. And I think that's really important to connect the different disciplines as well, and not to see through a lens of one discipline or another, because it's often the case. And in a socio-technical system, I really insist that it's really important to find funding mechanism as well to integrate the different disciplines. And we see that it's not that easy in terms of design of the program, so that everybody has a role and has the say, and it's not one that is dominating the other in such type of programs. And I think I agree with Georgia, the impact assessment is really important. And even if it's approximative, we need numbers to be more credible. So we really need not only qualitative measures, but also quantitative, in order to showcase what is a success, and also to share what is not a success, being able to share what doesn't work, so that we don't engage in those type of initiatives. And I have a question from the room here, from the National Thematic Network, about the database of digital projects that exist already. Is it possible to share the knowledge so that we can be inspired by the good example, for instance, that Peter has shared on the water? And we have also water living labs here, so that would be really interesting. Or in terms of digital twins, working on ICT, I think it could be really interesting to learn from the other. So that would be my expectations.
Thank you very much. Yes, and probably we will launch something that is going in this direction as well, also for the last comments. So Peter.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think this is a very good opportunity for connecting our already existing Living Lab and infrastructure with other initiatives. On the one hand, it's a good moment in our own region, which is the Northern Netherlands. There's an initiative already more targeting the digital side, but with this initiative, it makes extra sense to hook up also the smart zero pollution factor and build the whole network even stronger and more integrated. We are at the moment finalizing an application together with many European stakeholders for the European Partnership Water for All. It has a deadline on October 8th. And in there, there's a lot of room for demonstration projects, but also for demo sites, and also good ways of linking with, for instance, initiatives like this. So I see a clear opportunity to connect what we're doing with the partnership Water for All, as well as the mission Starship. Starship, did I say that? the Starfish, of course, that is currently slowly emerging. The first calls more dealing with aquaculture and oceans, but I hope that slowly also the freshwater side of the mission gets some more attention, because then we can clearly integrate some of the things we've already been doing, but also with other European stakeholders. So that would be very interesting. And I think something linked to policy, I think that we can also feed into new discussions, such as also the European technology infrastructures, how these various sites can support more quicker time to market for new innovations, for new technologies, and how living labs and demo sites can actually perform that role of technology infrastructures, and how that could help frame this new EU policy and possibly future support systems. So I think these sort of elements would for us be key. And then, of course, I would like to support everything that was just being said by Joël, that we need to, of course, see how far we can already connect with other partners within Europe, and see if some of the things that we're doing can be replicated elsewhere, or we can learn from others and connect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Some of the points you touched upon were really tackled during the conference, especially when we were talking about also living labs as technology infrastructure. So there will be also some follow-up activities on this as well. So to close, Johanna, your final statement on expectations.
Thank you. And I very much anticipate this carbon footprint calculator for consumers that will tap into our conscience in a way. I hope to see that soon. It's very interesting, innovative. I totally agree with the integration of sectors. It's critical for transport, energy, and the built environment, not putting aside, of course, water systems, etc. But this triplet, I think it's critical to start looking at it in an integrated manner. And what I would really like to see in the future is an increase of involvement of innovative SMEs and startups in the living labs, because they can really fuel innovation, they can bring new ideas, and can help also exploit the knowledge base that we have already from databases like Civitas and the good practices that have been communicated. But they can help transform, the consolidated knowledge into new solutions. So I would really like to see new people and young startups getting involved into city solutions.
Thank you, Joanna. I think Georgia has
allow me to add one thing, because there was a lot about discussion about the data and how they can be used for knowledge and also for startupping, etc. And because in our Smart Mobility Living Lab, we are very much dealing with this for years now. I will say that I'm expecting from this flagship, let's say, initiative to reach a point where really we can see a new regulated, or let's say volunteer framework for data provisioning between different stakeholders. So, for example, we have experience of these things happening in our case, where technology providers, operators, they provide the data to neutral parties like us, and then we can, so probably there we should give us a priority to formulate a European framework for this data provisioning and neutral data management for gaining of knowledge and supporting of decision making, and of course impact quantification, as it has been mentioned. So there we can do something, and we are ready to contribute there.
Thank you. Really a lot of food for thoughts. Before closing, I would like to ask the participants if they have any questions. They can either write it in the chat, or as we have this couple of minutes, if they would like to maybe just raise their hand and take the floor. I think we had so many good inputs, ideas, and also opportunities to pave the way forward that I would really like to thank all of our speakers and panelists, for sure the most experts in the sector. So thank you very much for bringing your views and your suggestions. And if there are no questions, maybe we have no, we just have a comment from Peter here. Okay, regarding his work with NSMEs. Okay. So yes, please. The very first Agora for networking is Among Us. So if you share anyways common interest, let's get in touch. You can get in touch through us for sure. So let's close this part of the session, and it is my pleasure now to leave the floor to Cristina Martinez, excuse me, to draw some conclusions of this very, very vivacious conversation we had so far. Cristina.
Thank you, Martina. Thank you all. First of all, I have to say that it's not an easy task actually to harvest all the good ideas and the dynamism and commitment that I've heard in this panel. So I hope I will give justice to this female-led panel for a change, because usually, at least in my digital policy area, it's mostly men talking. So I was very pleased to hear so much leadership in this important topic discussion. First of all, if I may, I would like to perhaps remind what Veronica said to all of us. Time is pressing. We only have 9 years to achieve the objectives of the European Green Deal, and that includes the Zero Pollution Action Plan targets, which are, as you know, quite ambitious. And I really insist they're quite ambitious, considering that we're still in a scenario of business as usual. So it will require a lot of commitment from everybody. And I think that there is a responsibility for the Living Labs in this aspect, as you're quite close to the innovation, that you can really create a safe operating space for testing new solutions, for scaling up successful ones, and for reflecting on the right indicators for any kind of solution, not only solutions that have to do with this issue, because as you said before, environmental issues, decarbonization, and a just transition, they all go hand in hand. And so this requires, I believe, a very strong response. And when we got this discussion here in the Commission from the colleagues in the environmental policy, we all already responded positively, because we thought that this was exactly matching our understanding of what the role of digital technology and policy should be. It's digital for a purpose, and we are willing to support the deployment of solutions, technological solutions that respond to this kind of challenges. So we have a number of actions foreseen. We have a program called the Digital Program, which will be funding activities in this area. So here I'm responding to Georgia, who said that we need to support those conversations among different stakeholders on how we share data, on which basis, what are the legal terms. And all this can be done, of course, using some available technology that the digital program will put at the service of those communities who are willing to share data. And so there will be data in different sectors. There will be data in what we call the European Green Deal areas, but also in the smart cities area, which actually is concentrating and focusing on some of the issues we just mentioned. So smart mobility, environmental issues, zero pollution, and decarbonization projects in general, not to mention energy also. So if I may, I think we need now to be very concrete. It's time to respond, as I said. So we need to be very concrete on how we want to go about this flagship that both the European Commission and the European Network of Living Labs have committed to deliver on. We have 2 years first to come with a plan. This is what I think broadly the communication says. We have 21 and 22 to set up a plan, and then we need to set up a number of recommendations by 2023. These recommendations, as you know, need to involve citizens, and they have to demonstrate demonstrate the added value of using digital for the purpose of achieving the zero pollution targets. And that's a complicated thing to do, because indeed we're testing solutions, we're deploying a lot of technologies, but we don't have the right indicators actually to measure the impact. And remember that impacts are systemic. As Peter said, you also need to look at the whole value chain of all the solutions that you're providing. And this is something that we don't know yet how to measure it in a let's say transparent way. And so I see here a role for the Living Labs also in providing this knowledge, in supporting in providing methodologies for the actors in the ground in making it right. Reacting also on some of the discussions and the expectations that I've heard from the participants, I think that we need to start with two main steps. The first one is, and we've discussed this, I believe, already in several contexts, is to set up a joint working group between the Commission and the Living Labs, the interested, the committed Living Labs who want to work on this important issue. We're suggesting a title, but I think we should call, perhaps for the creativity of all the participants to propose a name. Our suggestion is to call it Digital for Sustainability, including zero pollution. But if you have, let's say, more catchy or sexy ideas, I would be really, really willing to listening to this. And so we think that this working group would be very useful in feeding the conversations that are taking place today in the context of the Living in EU initiative. Another initiative that is supporting the digital transformation of communities in Europe, respecting some fundamental values and principles which have to do with the capacity to choose technology solutions that do not lock you in, based on open standards, supported by public funding that can be easily replicated, sharing best practices. These are the type of principles that are promoted by the Living in EU working groups. And the working group where Enol is leading the conversation is the one on education and capacity building. And I really see here a very nice opportunity for your people, for the experience that you have, to be brought at the next level. In order to do this, we think that we should have a first a kind of touch-based meeting. We would like to have a joint meeting, a conference. So, let's see how we can do it in a hybrid mode. That would define the concrete actions that this group could take together. We see a number of objectives. You mentioned awareness raising. We discussed the skills, capacity to measure. I heard education. I would like also to see the innovation promotion, and also the capacity to help to the transition. And that means working on the business models. We heard it before, on behavioral change. We heard about this as well. All this, I think, is a very valuable knowledge that should be brought at the level of the regions and of the communities who are willing to embrace this transition. So a number of objectives need to be defined. We need to put things in motion. That will require a lot of conversations, I know. But where I would like to insist, perhaps before finishing, is that there is already so many people working on these issues. And so the last thing we want is to yet start another initiative that starts from scratch and just those incremental improvements. We want to help you to connect with the right people. There are a lot of networks like the European Digital Innovation Hubs on the supply side, H2020 projects coming or funded by research programs of the EU, or Digital Europe projects, which will be setting up a lot of infrastructure and services, and also funding pilot projects, which will be exactly in this area. So please, let's convene together, let's exchange about what's available, and let's see what is the common denominator where we will make an impact, so that our energy, our effort and commitment is highly rewarded, and we don't spend time, redoing what is already being done elsewhere. So to conclude, I was really happy to see and to hear about this very dynamism and user engagement that is already being demonstrated in so many projects. I hope there will be a lot of participants in this new working group that we want to set up together, but more about it tomorrow. Again, the conclusion was, I will just paraphrase what Veronica said, there is nothing more important than ensuring that we have an environment and an action on this environment that respects the planetary boundaries, because without that, there is no economy, there is no society, there is nothing. And what we want is to indeed ensure a peaceful transition to a more sustainable society for ourselves and also for our children. And so it's very nice to see that together we can play a little role in this very difficult transition. And I'm very excited to be part of this journey together with you. So thank you so much for inviting us, and you can really count on the team here to support the Living Labs in this very, very important task. Thank you. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you all.
Very much, Christina. Please let me also thank Veronica Manfredi for being here with you, with us today, thanking you and all the speakers. And please let me really renew our commitment and our support in launching this new working group. Of course, this is also a call for expression of interest for all our Living Labs that would like to come on board. You will hear from us in the coming days, just to see how many of you are already interested, and so let's see how to really gather the most interested person around this new project. And also we are looking forward to organizing the next steps events. Thank you very much for today, European Commission. Thank you also to Joachim De Genio, that was actually the spin doctors also behind this together with DG Connect. So thank you very much, and ad maiora.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.